So, Big Thief's new album, Double Infinity. You've probably heard about it, right? It was without a doubt one of the most anticipated releases of the year. But here's the thing. What happens when all that hype runs into a really tough question? Like, has one of the absolute darlings of indie rock started, well, repeating themselves? Let's get into it.
And really, this is the question at the very heart of the review we're digging into today. It's not just about is it good or is it bad? No, it's something deeper. Is Double Infinity a genuine rebirth for the band, a huge step forward? Or is it just the sound of a band getting, a little too comfortable in their own skin? And that's the real tension we're going to unpack.
Okay, so Section 1, a band's new beginning. Before we can really get to an answer, we gotta understand the stakes here. I mean, who exactly is Big Thief? And why was everyone watching so closely for Double Infinity to drop?
All right, for a little background, these guys came out of the Brooklyn scene around 2015. They pretty quickly got a solid following for this raw, kind of indie folk sound. Think Neil Young, but for a whole new generation. But honestly, their real reputation was built on their live shows. People say they're just absolutely captivating. And it's also worth pointing out they're a trio now, which, always makes you wonder, is their sound gonna change?
And man, have they been busy. Seriously, look at this timeline. They almost never go more than a year or two without putting out new music. They even dropped 2 incredible albums back in 2019 alone. So when a band is that prolific and that consistently good, you can imagine the expectations for their next album are just massive. Which brings us to Section 2, the promise of infinity. Right, so with all that history, all that momentum, the band didn't just frame Double Infinity as another album. No, this was supposed to be a creative rebirth. The name itself, Double Infinity, kind of screams something huge, expansive, and totally new.
So yeah, the whole rollout for the album was promising this dreamlike, almost out-of-body listening experience. But then you get to the review, and it hits you with this stark warning. Beware of the dream. And that right there, that's where the hype train starts to grind against the cold, hard reality of actually listening to the album.
Okay, Section 3, critique, a familiar feeling. So what was the reviewer so worried about? Did the album just totally fail to deliver on that big, dreamy promise? Well, no, not exactly. The main criticism wasn't that the album was bad, but that it felt, well, really, really familiar.
The whole review basically boils down to this one single question. Is this a genuine work of art? Something that's pushing boundaries and exploring new ground? Or is it just a stylistic exercise? The sound of a really talented band just polishing up a formula they already have down pat?
And this chart, man, it just perfectly captures that disconnect. On the one hand, you've got the promise, this big, transcendental, fresh, creative rebirth. And on the other hand, you have what the reviewer says is the reality, a kind of too polite melancholy, a sound that's familiar and nostalgic, and ultimately a comfortable, well-made mold.
Wow, this quote from the review is kind of brutal, but also perfect. It suggests that the emotion on the album totally works, but maybe it works a little too well. It feels less like some raw, spontaneous outpouring and more like a perfectly engineered sadness machine.
Oof. I love this metaphor. The review compares the album to a feast where the same exact dish is served over and over. And that's so powerful because it's not actually an insult, right? The reviewer isn't saying the food is bad, they're just saying it's the same food again and again. And I mean, no matter how much you love a dish, after the 4th or 5th plate, it starts to get a little boring.
So, when you boil it all down, the critique is really about a kind of creative stagnation. The reviewer points to things like indecisive melodies, a general lack of originality, and the fact that this is like their 4th album in the same melancholic style. It's stylish for sure, but maybe just a little too comfortable to really land a punch. It's an evolution, yeah, but definitely not the revolution some people were waiting for.
All right, on to Section 4, the reviewer's final verdict. Now, it's super important to know this review isn't just some big takedown. The criticism is definitely sharp, but it's balanced with some really high praise. And that's what gives us the full picture. And here's where that balance comes in. Despite all the knocks on the album's overall direction, the reviewer makes one thing absolutely crystal clear. The talent here is off the charts. Adrianne Lenker's voice, specifically, is called out as a gem, something that can just channel pure, raw emotion. That's some serious praise. And this scorecard just lays it all out, doesn't it? It's the two sides of the coin. On the left, you've got everything that's praised. Lenker's voice, that raw emotion, the well-crafted songs. But all that good stuff is up against this nagging feeling on the right, that it's just not original, that it's stylistically safe.
It perfectly sums up the whole conflict of the review.
So what's the final takeaway here? The bottom line from this review seems to be that your enjoyment of Double Infinity totally depends on what you're coming to it for. If you're a diehard fan, you're probably gonna love it. It's charming, it's familiar. But if you were someone hoping to see the band really stretch and push into new territory, well, you might walk away feeling a little disappointed.
And that brings us to the final and honestly pretty provocative question the review leaves us with. And this is bigger than just one album, right? This is about the whole future of Big Thief. Can a band this talented actually redefine themselves before their signature sound becomes less of a strength and more of a trap? I'm curious. What do you all think?